The story begins in Tarascon, France, in 1956. The church service is about to start. Following Father Neret's instructions, Jack brings the holy wine and goes alone to store the rest in the storage room. As he kicks a football lying in front of him into the dark room, it mysteriously rolls back toward him. Just then, a wine bottle suddenly shatters, frightening Jack, who rushes to inform the father. When Father Neret returns with him, they hear someone taking a long, deep breath. The air inside the church grows heavy. In the dense darkness, they see a cursed demonic nun, a powerful demon named Velik. Before Jack's eyes, this sinister entity lifts the father into the air and burns him alive in an instant. Meanwhile, an unfamiliar person leaves the church, with the shadow of the nun trailing behind. The story then shifts to Sister Irene's life. She has dedicated her entire life to serving God. Her closest companion here is Sister Deborah. Deborah came to the mission from Mississippi. Having grown up in poverty, her father sent her brother to serve as a soldier for the country and Deborah to the mission. Irene's life has been somewhat similar. She was very close to her mother, but after her mother's death, she began living at the mission. One afternoon, the senior sister informs them of the mysterious deaths of several nuns at St. Carter Church. A priest and a nun had once used a sacred ancient relic containing the blood of Jesus Christ to defeat a demon. However, after that incident, the nun went missing. It was believed that the Vatican Church had hidden her. In reality, the church was recounting the story of the nun, part 1, and from this, it becomes clear that the sacred nun and priest were none other than Irene and Morris. However, because Irene had kept her identity secret after that incident, no one knew about her. One night, Irene sees Morris in a dream and realizes that the demon Velik inside him has grown even stronger. Coincidentally, that same day, a father from the church's higher authority comes to meet her. He informs her that, for some time now, scattered reports of church members' deaths have been coming in from various places: Hungary, Austria, Italy, and recently, a priest in France who burned to death. Each death follows a specific pattern, starting from Romania and moving westward across Europe. Since Father Brooke has now died of cholera, the higher authority wants to send Sister Irene to investigate the matter. Although Irene hesitates due to what had happened last time at St. Carter Church, the authority refuses to accept her refusal. Left with no choice, she packs her belongings and sets off for France the next day. However, Sister Deborah secretly boards the train with her because she refuses to leave Irene to face danger alone. Meanwhile, in France, Morris is now working as a caretaker at a girls' mission under the supervision of Madame Laurent. He is particularly close to teacher Kate and her daughter, Sophie. However, it's not just them, everyone at the mission adores Morris because of his kind nature. But as we saw in the Nun 1, Velik was never truly destroyed. Instead, it possessed Morris. As a result, Morris sometimes behaves strangely and unknowingly commits murders. At the mission, after class, a group of mischievous girls leads Sophie to a forbidden area that has been locked up for years and is off-limits to everyone. In the ruins of the chapel, there is a glass window featuring the image of a devilish creature. At a specific time during the day, sunlight hits the window, making its eyes glow. The mischievous girls lock Sophie inside and run away. Velik, lurking there, terrifies Sophie. Just in time, Morris arrives and rescues her, but soon, Velik begins to make its presence known to Sophie. Morris learns from Kate that Madame Laurent's son, Cedric, died in that section of the chapel during the war. Since then, she has kept that part of the building sealed off. Meanwhile, Irene and Deborah arrive at the church in France and discover that the townspeople have stopped coming there, believing the church to be cursed. A sister informs them that the only eyewitness to the incident was Jack. However, a few days before the father's death, a worker named Fancy had arrived from Romania but left the church that very night. Upon hearing the name Fancy, Irene is startled, as Fancy was Morris's nickname. That afternoon, while walking along the roadside, Irene spots Jack and asks him about Father Neret's rosary. Jack, terrified, runs away. Irene follows him into a dark alley in town and reaches a small bookstall on the roadside, where Velik appears and frightens her. As Velik grabs Irene by the throat, she suddenly envisions strange things, though she cannot make sense of them. Shortly after, Deborah finds her unconscious and rescues her. The scene shifts back to Madame Laurent. Late at night, she hears a noise and goes to the abandoned area of the chapel, where she finds Morris banging his head against the door. When she approaches to check on him, Morris regains consciousness and runs away in fear. At that moment, she hears Cedric's voice from inside, calling out for his mother. As Laurent enters, she senses Cedric's terrifying presence. Just then, Velik kills Laurent. The next day, after the police take Laurent's body away, Sophie privately shares the strange occurrences she has been experiencing with Morris. Meanwhile, when Irene regains consciousness, she begins to realize that some of her visions were actually significant. She understands that Velik is using Morris to obtain a powerful ancient relic, and once he gets it, he will kill Morris. Deborah then reveals that Jack had given her father Neret's rosary. Upon closer examination of the photos of the deceased sent by the higher authorities of the church, They notice that each of the victims possessed the same marked rosary, meaning all their deaths were somehow connected. But they still need to uncover the true meaning of the symbol. Fortunately, Irene has a friend who works at the Catholic Archives. From them, she learns that the symbol belongs to the sacred lineage of Saint Lucy. When the pagans murdered Saint Lucy, her descendants fled to save their lives. They were relentlessly hunted afterward. History states that Saint Lucy's lineage has been protecting a sacred relic, Saint Lucy's eyes. Irene recalls the visions she had at the bookstore, which align with this information. But why does Velik need these eyes? Irene's friend speculates that Velik might have once been an angel who was stripped of his power and cast out of heaven by God. To regain his full strength, this demon needs Saint Lucy's eyes. That's why he has been hunting down and killing her descendants in search of them. Irene must find the eyes before Velik does and send him back to hell, just as they had done at St. Carter's Church. But where are these eyes hidden? Irene's friend finds an old manuscript stating that the relic was last in the possession of a monk named John Paul Rader. According to a letter retrieved from the Vatican, he had buried the relic somewhere in his monastery, which was later sold and converted into a wine cellar. Currently, the place has been turned into a boarding school owned by Madame Laurent. Without wasting a moment, Irene and Deborah set out for the boarding school. Meanwhile, a change begins to appear in Morris. An inverted cross mark emerges on his neck. The closer Irene and Deborah get, the more Velik seems to take on his true form. Since they are now only an hour apart, Irene and Morris finally come face to face. Irene warns everyone to stay away from Morris because Velik resides within him. At that moment, Morris becomes possessed and attacks them. When Irene tries to stop him, Velik briefly calms down. Seizing the opportunity, Deborah knocks Morris unconscious and ties him up. During all this, Irene notices that Morris was instinctively heading toward the abandoned area of the chapel. This makes her suspect that the relic might be buried there. Hearing this, Sophie is shocked and recalls the image of a devil's eye painted on the chapel's glass window. She explains that light reflects off the glass and falls on a particular spot inside. Deborah goes outside and shines a flashlight through the window, which reflects onto a specific area of the floor. Digging at that spot, they uncover the relic, the eyes of Saint Lucy. Just then, Morris breaks free and, fully transformed into the devil, attacks everyone in the mission. As Deborah tries to protect the children, the demon shifts into different terrifying forms to instill fear in them. Meanwhile, Morris lunges at Irene and starts choking her. Sophie grabs the relic and runs toward the bell tower, with Morris in pursuit. As soon as he reaches the tower, the relic activates, causing the entire structure to collapse along with Velik. Fortunately, Sophie manages to survive by clinging onto broken wooden beams. Irene then arrives and attacks Velik, who is still possessing Morris, using the relic. Velik tries to deceive her, begging her to spare Morris. However, Irene doesn't stop. Eventually, Morris starts bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth before seemingly dying. But it was all a trick. The moment he gets the chance, Morris grabs the relic. It burns and disintegrates in his hands, transferring all of its power into him. The eyes of Saint Lucy now belong to him. Velik then reveals his true form, growing even more powerful. He begins attacking everyone by manifesting their deepest fears. Meanwhile, the demon continues its reign of terror over the other women. Just then, Velik, disguising himself as Father Neret, sets Irene's body on fire. As she screams in agony, Velik's maniacal laughter echoes through the chaos, intensifying the horror of the situation. Irene begins to remember her beloved mother. Her mother used to say, "I am always with you, don't be afraid." In reality, her mother also had a divine gift, which allowed her to sense dark forces. As soon as Irene recalls the name of Saint Lucy, the fire extinguishes. Amidst the chaos and destruction, wine starts flowing out from all the wooden vessels stored there. The two of them realize that everything is a battle of faith and disbelief. Just as wine in the church is considered sacred as the blood of Jesus Christ, Irene and Deborah, holding hands, begin to pray and remember God. As a result, the spilled wine turns into the blood of Christ and spreads over Velik, causing Velik to burn in flames. Eventually, Velik is reduced to ashes, and everything becomes calm. Morris is now safe. Just as Morris had saved Irene before, today she repaid the favor. Kate, and especially Sophie, embrace him tightly, relieved to have him back. However, a lingering doubt remains in Irene's mind. Is everything truly over? That was today's movie. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more videos.